There we go. Hello, this is Jack Olmstead. I'm coming to you from Port Townsend, Washington. I'm your digital reporter, and today I am going to be speaking with Steve Paranto from Hillsboro, Oregon, and his partner Randy. How are you doing, Steve?
Hey, we're doing great today. How are you, Jack?
Just fine. It looks like you're basking in the sun.
Oh, we have a great day here today. This is probably 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's about 75 degrees.
It's a good pickleball day.
Yeah.
I think every day.
I'm going to introduce Randy. Randy and I have been partners since the 80s, late 80s. We taught school together, played basketball together, and I taught him pickleball. And wow, we've been playing fairly seriously ever since, especially since he retired from teaching. So about the last 7 years playing a lot of senior events.
So Randy, can you introduce Steve for us, since you've known him for such a long time? What kind of a guy is Steve?
Oh, this is Steve. Steve is Mr. Pickleball. He has a history of the very beginnings of pickleball, and Steve's in for a penny, in for a pound. Is always looking for ways to improve the game and to make it real consistent across the board for players in Oregon and across the United States and throughout the country. He's a top player.
Are you a top-rated player now as well?
Yeah.
Has Steve made you a better player, pickleball player?
The player I am today, and then a little help from myself, I am a little better.
National championships together for our age. So beginning when we were in our 50s to 55, and then 55s to 59s. I'm looking forward to him turning 60 here next year, so we can do the 60s.
That's right. Isn't it a big rush to get older? Doesn't it just want to make you get older faster?
Yeah, pickleball actually makes it not hurt so bad when you get older.
Talking about hurting, do you have anything you'd like to talk? I know that old people like to talk about their aches and pains. Do you have any aches and pains you want to talk about today?
Yeah, we both have those things going on. Both of us have ankle issues right now. We're probably going to have surgeries together in the fall so we can recover together after nationals this year. Really?
So that's what you do when you get over 60. You get together with your partners and you have surgeries together.
That's right.
Yeah, I just can't get away from him, you know. We'll probably be roommates.
So, Steve, you got some AV, some things next to you. So do you want to give us a little dog and pony show?
You know, I didn't realize that so many, since I've been playing this game since '74, when I was 18 years old, and a lot of people just don't know how the game has progressed as far as rules and equipment, and a lot of people are interested in that. So I don't know what's happened over the years. When I first started playing this sport, it was intramurally at my community college near where the game was invented. It was Auburn, Washington at Green River Community College. And it was an intramural game, and I played tennis for Green River, and all of the tennis players, we'd just go in the gym and play pickleball whenever we got a chance. A lot of lunchtimes playing pickleball. And we were using this paddle at that time. It had holes in it. It's actually a paddle tennis paddle, and there were no rules against that at that time. If you can tell, it's fair. I'll show you the comparisons of how the paddles have changed. They've gotten a lot bigger. This was heavy too. This weighs about 13 and a half ounces. Holes did help a little bit get through the air a little faster. So that was the first paddle I ever played with. Then, this sport was invented by Joel Pritchard and Barney McCallum and his buddies, and they started a company, Pickleball Inc., which we have to thank them for everything that they've done to get this sport going. This was their first, when they realized they had a sport that was going to be popular, they manufactured paddles that look like this. So still wood, fairly small. This is kind of a replica of what they cut out in their garage when they were first playing on Bainbridge Island. When they started Pickleball Inc., these were sold to lots of schools. I became a PE teacher, and this is what we used back in the PE classes back then. All the first tournaments through about '84 were played with paddles similar to this, or this paddle seemed to be everybody's favorite. This one's called the Master. Then what happened was we went to Composite, And that's because of my dad following me around in tournaments, and I was complaining about how heavy these were. And I weighed the ratio of a ball and a paddle in tennis, and the ratio was only 7 times heavier, and these were 13 times heavier than a ball.
Now, when you did the weight on the tennis racket, were you weighing the wooden rackets at the time, back in the 70s, or the metal rackets?
They were already fairly light. I was using a head comp, which was a composite type paddle, Arthur Ashe head comp. They weren't as light as today, though, that's for sure. So it's even gone more lighter for tennis. But they were just starting to approach the period where they were using larger heads and lighter rackets, but they were not wood.
Because when I started playing tennis, they were wooden rackets, and then we got the Jimmy Connors came in with the metal rackets, and then the Arthur Ashe came in with that composite. So you were comparing the composite to the wooden pickleball paddles at the time.
What I was doing, I was weighing my Arthur Ashe head comp, and I was weighing a tennis ball, and the racket about 7 times heavier than the tennis ball.
Okay.
And then I weighed this paddle and a pickleball, and it was 13 times heavier. So I knew the ratio was wrong. Mentioned it to my dad. I was listening to the same people over and over. And Dad made 2 of these for my partner at the time, was Richard Skevington, a high school buddy of mine that also went to Green River. I taught how to play, a really good athlete. Later on, we won what was billed as the U.S. Open back in, well, after this paddle came out. So it would have been 85, 86, something like this. So these came out in about 84. This became some light company in 84, 85. And then we started selling them to friends, and then we started selling them to sporting goods stores. This was the only composite paddle for about 10 years. My dad sold the company, and then before you knew it, we had people copying us left and right. Now I've lost track of companies that are making a paddle similar to this, basically the same material. This is floor paneling from a Boeing jet airplane, and my dad was an engineer at Boeing, so he knew about the material.
So your dad started this company. Were you employed with that company, or were you just like being a PE teacher?
Well, I was employed in a way. I didn't get paid. I would be in the garage making end caps, and that, I would have a menial job. He had it all set up like an assembly line where, we would go pick up all the material, bring it home. It was scrap material from Boeing. Cut them out with a router. Dad had the edge guards made by a molding company. Dad made the machine that made the cap. He had to melt plastic. It was about a 20-step process to make a paddle. So I guess I was employed in that way. I don't remember getting any money. And he was making decent money at the time to do it. We were selling these at tournaments for $20 a piece at that time. And
you were getting them for, well, the material was dirt cheap, right? It was just the labor. The labor, right, which was your labor, which was free. So your dad was making money off of your labor.
Yeah, but he mainly did all the work. I was gone to college, or actually I was just out of college teaching in Oregon at the time. So I was about 3 hours away.
You said it was a 20-step process. How long would it take for you to assemble one racket or one paddle?
Well, you wouldn't do just one. Like I said, you would buy the
material. But on assembly lines, would it take like 5 or 10 minutes, or?
I'll tell you exactly. I know that Dad figured out if he could make $20 an hour, that was fine with him, and that's probably.
Okay. What happened to the second paddle? Your dad made 2 paddles. You've got 1. What happened to the second paddle?
Yeah, you were talking about what kind of tennis rackets were out at that time. Well, Prince at that time was making the oversized tennis rackets. And so I came up with the idea, well, let's do an oversized pickleball paddle. There really weren't a lot of, I don't even know at that very time if we even had rules on the length and width of a paddle. I have the early rule book here to show you when we did have rules. But so we made this one, which lengthwise was the same, wider. This was our version of the Prince. Remember when Prince were making big tennis rackets?
Right.
So we did that. Another thing we tried, Randy, where's your curved paddle? Oh, in the middle 80s, I had wrist surgery because I was bowling too much. And so Dad made just a few of these for close friends, an ergonomic paddle. So you see how the handle curves down? There's only a few of these, but it took stress off your wrist because you held it on the serve. This would have an advantage over the way the rules are today on the serve. Give that to Randy. Now paddles are going to even longer. So if you compare, they're longer, they're wider, and they have a lot of paddles now are having short grips because a lot of the style now isn't holding it like a tennis racket way down here. It's people holding more like ping pong. And when you hold a paddle like this, look how much space I'm wasting. So for the people that grip it like this, which is tending to be more about 50% of the top players are now gripping down, and I think it's for control. You do get a lot of control with that. So now we're using longer paddles.
They're narrower, but they're longer.
Well, yeah. In fact, I can go over the original paddles. I wrote down the rules here. In fact, so this is the original rule book for these, and you see we have a Nally's Pickle on the front. They sponsored a lot of our first USAPA tournaments that were in Tacoma. We were playing, by the way, on indoors on carpet at that time. But the paddles back then, they only were 7.5 inches wide by 15 inches. And now we are going as much as, let me see, I wrote it down, 8. They're about an inch, basically almost an inch longer. The blew up, Randy, if you could fix that. So the rules have changed a little bit that allow a little bit bigger paddles. I think actually if USAPA had to do it all over again, they might not have one of the rules now is it's the combined width and length can't be over 24 inches. That's what we have now. That's the current rule. What that is doing is making paddles almost 2 inches longer than they used to be, and they're making them narrower, which is that are tall dominate the sport because of the no volley zone.
Which means people that are taller have more power because they're taller.
They have more reach, and it's getting really hard to dink a short ball to a tall person. Farther, and then we also were getting taller people playing. When the sport was first invented, the height of the net and the no volley zone was set up around the people that they had playing on Bay Bridge Island. And from the story I've heard from Barney is that they did have one fairly tall guy playing back then. So that's how the height of the net was determined and where the no volley zone is. But now we're getting taller and more athletic people playing and longer paddles, and the balls have changed. Let me talk about the balls.
Can we talk about the height a little bit?
Sure.
You're a tall guy, aren't you?
Well, I'm 5'11", but Randy's 6'6".
I'm the tall one.
Yeah, you need one of those guys on the court a lot of times.
Oh, so you're the tall one. You're the muscle.
Yeah. What Steve was talking about with the reach is, with my reach and that long paddle, I'm almost in the net. So people have to dink really short, and if they slightly pop it up, to me, it's going to come back a lot faster.
So you're 6'6", so if you have a longer paddle, you have a definite advantage over anybody that's under 6 feet.
Yeah, I can generate a little bit more.
Well, it's not. If you dink just this much too long to a tall person, they can pop it, where a shorter person can't. The ball's too low by the time it gets to them.
How do they adjust for that?
Well,
how do they handicap the tall people to play short people?
You don't dink straight across to a tall person. If they're good and they're straight across from you, you don't want to dink straight across to the tall people very often, because that straight across dinks are the ones that go the farthest in the no volley zone. So you want to dink cross court to tall people.
Well, don't you want to dink cross court to everybody?
Well,
I mean,
you to have more
because the error of the margin of error is much greater
That's
to
true.
dink cross court than to dink across from somebody.
That's true. That's why you see a lot of cross-court dinking games. But
So
you
that's
also
just
all around. You don't want to always. But let's say the person straight across from you is the weaker of the two. Take that person and dink a lot to that person, regardless if it's cross-court or straight across.
that's right. That's one of the strategies. You play to the weakest link of the group.
Yeah.
Right, which is becoming fewer and fewer teams. That when we used to play nationals 5 years ago, we'd always decide before a match who we hit almost every ball to. That's changed. Now teams they're both good. So now it's all about moving the ball around. A lot more strategy involved when you're playing two really good players.
And patience.
Yeah.
Really, how's your patience? Who's the most patient of the two?
I would like to dink all day. I'd like it to be a marathon where we're just dink, 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 dink until someone pops one up. It's kind of like the old baseliners in tennis would just hit baseline if someone makes a mistake. So I'd like to just dink until someone pops it up or makes a mistake. But when I'm playing with Randy, if I move the ball around, they usually pop one up for Randy to put away. He's the put away guy.
Okay. You want to talk about the balls?
Yeah, I do. So, and this is something that's really affected the sport of pickleball. So originally, the ball was this ball here. This is a Cosm Fun Play ball, baseball size, not made by any pickleball manufacturer whatsoever, never even made in the thought of using for the sport of pickleball. But when the inventors, Joel Pritchard and Barney and his gang, invented the sport, this ball was available in the neighbor's yard. That's kind of how the story goes. And they used this ball with wooden paddles that they had just cut out in their shop. So this ball was the only ball in pickleball for most of the, this is in 50 years now, going on 51 years of pickleball. This one is the one that was used in all our beginning when we sanctioned the sport, indoors and outdoors. This was the only ball. So it's kind of ironic it wasn't made by any pickleball company. It's fairly soft, that warm outside, so it's kind of soft. It's much slower than what most of the country plays with when they play with a hard outdoor ball. Again, this is played indoors and out. We wouldn't even sanction any other ball. About late 80s, early 90s, came out with this ball, a harder ball. Now, there's different brands, but this is probably a Duraball. Slightly bigger, more holes, smaller holes, heavier, and much harder. So you can push a little bit on it today, but with Wes, when we play with this ball, it's a rock. We hate it when it's cold, no control. I also hate it when you're playing a tournament where it's cool in the morning and it's hard like a rock. Then later in the afternoon, it softens up like this one. It's like two different sports in one day. We did not the first rule. And the story goes that when they were playing, and this is what made the sport catch on, is all the outdoor play in places like Surprise, Arizona. Maybe if Bob Youngren sees this anywhere, he could respond. But they were playing a tournament using this ball because this was the only ball accepted outdoors at Happy Trails in Surprise. And it was so windy, Bob threw this ball in, and people thought, hey, it gets through the wind better. And that's what became now the outdoor ball.
So Pickleball Inc. developed that ball, but they didn't develop it for tournament play. They just developed it to sell to pickleball players.
They publicized this as the only pickleball. And so this was supposed to be used indoors and outdoors. Indoors, this is horrible. If you play this on a wood floor or a tile floor, the rallies are awful.
How about on a carpeted floor? How about a carpeted floor or a rubber floor?
Not indoors. It wouldn't be as good as this. The rallies are not as good with this indoors, period. In fact, you're going to get longer rallies everywhere with this ball unless it's windy. even outdoors.
So when you say it's terrible indoors, that just means that the power player gets an advantage because they can whip it across the surface.
It won't be the sport that you know as pickleball, where you have long rallies and dinking. It's just indoors on wood, just be bang, bang. But pickleball made this ball to sell to everyone, and all the schools were, unfortunately, and I was a PE teacher during that time, schools were buying this and using it in PE, and the kids were having a hard time. Kids to learn, in fact, anybody to learn pickleballs with a slower indoor ball. So that's what happened there, and this is still the ball used in a lot of outdoor tournaments. And when it's hot and soft, it plays pretty well. But like we have here in the Northwest, it's like a rock. So the new balls that are coming out soon will look like this. And this will be out, the date set is August 1st. I can't wait. This is an Onyx ball. It's called the Pier 2. Actually, this one I have holding in my hand is the Pier 1. So the first attempt they made at making a better outdoor ball, and it bounced too high. This is legal right now, but it won't be legal soon. I can tell you the bounce rates in just a second. But you can tell this is much softer, more control, but it's still heavy and goes through the wind well. So, and it doesn't break. I would say it lasts 15 times longer than a Duraball. So I think this is probably going to take over the outdoor play. It's still not good indoors. It's too heavy and too fast. But they will be making an indoor ball too.
Do you want to talk about the rules? You were on the subcommittee for rules for the balls. Is that correct?
Well, no, I've been on a committee about the ratings. About
the ratings, not the balls.
The USAPA just recently changed the bounce limit, and I think that's going to help quite a bit. Standardize the bounce of a ball. You know, originally we never even had rules on how high a ball could bounce. So for many years, the recent rule, in fact, still current today until October 1st, is if you bounce a ball from 75 inches, it must bounce between 29 and 37. That's a big range. It's probably way too big of a range. And this company, Onyx, came out with this ball. They were in that range, but they were at the top end of the range. And good players didn't like it because it's set up too high and people would hit winners too early. So now the USAPA has made new rules. When a ball is bounced from 78 inches, it has to bounce between 30 and 34. And by the way, this is at 75 to 80 degrees, which is probably a fair temperature. And it's on a hard surface, so not a wood surface.
Well, yeah, they're talking about a granite surface.
And outdoor ball.
Why would they have the same specs for indoor and outdoor and bounce them on the similar surface if the surfaces are going to be different for indoor? Indoor could be, you could also have concrete floors on indoor. Why don't they rate the balls according to the surface of the courts?
You cut out on me there. Right now, it's all based on outdoor surface, the bounce, even for an indoor ball. That might be a mistake. We'll see when all the new balls come out. When the new rules take effect October 1st, the jugs ball, which has been widely used indoors, everybody's favorite here, it's outlawed October 1st. But I'm hearing that jugs, because they realize how big pickleball is, that they're making a new ball that will bounce slightly less. This bounces about an inch too high right now.
They can't be happy about that. They're a Korean company. What do they do with all their excess inventory, and what do? They have to retool up?
Yeah, they are retooling up just for pickleball, because they never made these for pickleball. They were just like Cossum. They made these for kids with batting machines, practice balls. These were never made for pickleball. It's just that they met our standards.
Schools and PE teachers.
Right. But now the jugs realizes how important it is. Now they're making a ball that will bounce less. One other thing that's interesting, temperature affects bounce, and it affects these balls in different ways. The Duraball, the outdoor Duraball, when it's hot, bounces much lower. It gets soft and bounces lower. It's remarkable how much lower it bounces. That's actually in the Northwest when we like this ball. But when it's cold, it's hard like a rock and bounces higher. Now, here, when they get hot, they do the opposite. They bounce higher. So we have two kinds of balls that go different ways in the temperature. So that's why now they've set the temperature limit and they've made the bounce limit smaller and then set the temperature at 75 to 80. I think that's going to help.
Well, you just explained it to me, and I'm confused. I seem to, if I'm going to do a tournament or if I'm going to play, I need several types of balls depending upon if the sun is shining or not.
Well, right now you have to be aware of that and know what the traits are for the particular ball. For example, the Dura ball, in the mornings, it's a rock that travels a lot further, and so it's hard to have a good soft touch for dinking. But as an afternoon warms up, that ball becomes softer, and your dinking game, your touch game, becomes more effective.
That 30 to 34 inch bounce, if you're within that range, I think it's going to be okay. I mean, I'll see when they come out. I know they do have different tennis balls for different altitudes, and tennis balls are also affected. I had an argument with somebody on Facebook about this, but it's true. A tennis ball bounces higher when it's warm too.
Well, they also bounce higher when they're new, as opposed to playing a couple of sets, and how much air is inside them. I mean, there's a lot of things at play, but in terms of a wiffle ball, pickleball, it bounces higher, harder in the colder in the mornings than in the afternoon, and that would favor a power player, or it would favor, it wouldn't give the power player as much leadway because the ball would bounce higher, which means people would be able to get to the shot. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fair to say. And that's just with that ball.
That's with that ball. Yeah, that's with that ball.
I think overall what they're trying to do is get a ball like the Pure 1, or now soon to be the Pure 2, is to have it react the same way regardless of the temperature.
So when
a ball act exactly the same way regardless of, because of temperature, but we're trying to get them closer together anyway.
So when you talk about they, are you talking about a committee made up of manufacturers that produce the balls, or are you talking about just players or people that are board members that are the one that makes the decision? I mean, who are they?
Well, Dennis Dacey is the head of the rules committee and decides a lot about, and there's other people on there with him. I do think he made a really good decision of going from 29 to 37 inches to 30 to 34. The game is still pickleball. If we have balls that are bouncing too high or too lively, it's going to be a very difficult game for shorter people to play. It's going to be hard for lower skilled people to learn the game. And in the past, we've always had a chance where seniors could win a national, maybe even an open championship, when the balls get too fast or too bouncy, it's going to be harder and harder for older people and maybe people that weren't tennis pros to compete in the sport.
But again, in terms of the decision, are manufacturers involved in these decisions, or are they not? Are they excluded?
Yeah, I couldn't hear the last part. We were breaking up.
Manufacturers of the balls, are they part of the process of deciding the standards?
No, they don't have anything to do with that. They just meet the standards. They find out where the bounce needs to be, and they just meet it. No, they don't. They're not influencing the rules of the sport at all, except that the equipment changes how you play. But the rules are decided by the USPA.
I mean, they don't decide. They're not on the board. They're not in the committees.
I think maybe I will tell you this. This is kind of a funny story. So when we were first forming USAPA, And by the way, it wasn't that easy at first to get our composite paddle legalized. We had to make sure that, first off, convince players that it was fun playing with it. When we first came out with this paddle, my dad got on the rules committee for USAPA, probably this rules book. In fact, and one of the rules says in here clearly, no holes are allowed in the paddle. Do this.
So why wouldn't holes be allowed? Yeah, why wouldn't holes be allowed in the paddle? Because it would make the paddle lighter. Does it give anybody any advantage with having holes in the paddle? Do you get more spin off the ball? What is the advantage of having holes in the paddle except for having it lighter?
Okay, so I want to tell you why we put that rule in. I told Dad, and this is just Dad and me, we're starting this company, and I said, hey Dad, the only way that wood could compete with us that if you because it creates spin. It doesn't create spin. I know this paddle doesn't create any more spin, but that rule stuck, and it's still a rule today. Paddles would probably be better with holes in them. And I think you could space them that would not create spin. Think about it, the balls have holes.
I know.
I don't think it would create any more spin. And what it does do, it makes the paddle lighter, makes it move through the air quicker, and quieter. Holes quiet down a paddle, so you're solving a lot of things. But I don't think that will ever change now, and that was all because of Dad and I kind of getting together and saying, hey, the only way wood could compete with us is if they put holes. So we got this rule in one of the first rule books right here, and now it sticks today. I think that's kind of funny.
So are you done talking about paddles and balls?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to talk about how some rules have changed over the years.
Yeah, let's talk about the rules. Do you want to bring up your rule book?
Now the new rule book, much more defined. The rules are, because our sport's getting to be a big sport, there's still some rules that need to be clarified. But you know, we're in pickleball is still in its infancy when you consider really the boom has only been the last 10 years of pickleball. So let me just talk about how rules have changed over the years. When the sport was invented, on the original court, they had a tree growing behind their baseline. Service rule years of this sport, I think the rule only changed about 10 years ago, maybe less. You could have 1 foot inside the baseline when you serve. So that's one rule that you would notice right away if you were to go back in time and watch people play.
Somebody that I play pickleball with, they got called on a foot fault because their foot touched the line when they served. I mean, they're getting pretty picky. Does anybody get any advantage of having a foot in the court as to having both feet outside the court and not having a toe touch a line?
We would stand back in those days with our front foot as far into the court as we could. And it is an advantage because the ball's going to be going slightly faster, more so in singles, because singles we go for winners more, and it's really important to serve deep and hard. So not so much in doubles was it an advantage, which is what everybody plays now, but it was an advantage in singles to stand as far as you could inside the baseline with 1 foot just back behind the baseline.
I mean, even today, singles is not a dinking game. It's not a finesse game. It is a power game. I don't think you're ever going to get a finesse game with singles. All the rules are basically being changed for doubles, and singles just kind of goes along with those rules changes. They don't have separate rules for singles because singles is a totally different game than doubles, do they?
Totally. And the reason for that is when you think about it, we have the same boundaries for singles and doubles.
Right.
And so, in other words, you have a fairly small court for 2 people that can dink, 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 dink. But it is a fairly big court in singles, so there's passing shots. So singles players are serving deep, returning deep, coming in every single time and trying to either pass the player or set them up so the next one after that is a pass.
Anyway, go ahead. The rules.
Yeah, the serve. Also, in the original service rules, all it said was contact made below your waist, period. That was it. It's actually very simple, and I think actually that's better than all the things we have now. So it's very complicated. Grab a paddle here again. Now we have to have now we changed the waist to the belly button, which that's fine. That's just a different definition of where your waist is. That defines where your waist is. It's now the belly button. The problem with that is, where is your belly button? Everybody has a shirt on, as far as I know, when they play. We don't issue belly button stickers when we play a match.
Serena Williams, she's not playing pickleball, but I think we can all see her belly button when she plays tennis.
Why we want to get her into pickleball.
I was giving private lessons to one of my friend's girlfriends a couple years ago, and it was really hot, and she asked me if she could take her top off. She had a sports bra on, I want to make that clear. And I said, well, sure, and now I'll give you a lesson on the serve since I can see your belly button. So that was kind of funny. But then right after her, I had two 75-year-olds come for their lesson. And I go, well, so you guys, you have to take your shirts off today because I'm giving service lessons. And they looked at me like kind of worried, but it was a joke. But that really happened. So anyway, now we have the rule, contact must be made below the belly button. So when the ball's hitting your paddle, below the belly button, but nobody knows where your belly button is. So the referee doesn't know that, for one thing. Second thing is, now you have to have an upward motion. Only has to be 1 degree. So that's legal, that's illegal. Legal, illegal. You mean you're going to watch a paddle going as fast as they can swing it and know if that's upward or downward? Very difficult. And then the last thing is, now we have a rule where no part of the paddle can be above your wrist at impact. I am even down here, but the paddle's above my wrist. Now it's illegal. And I disagree with that. You're still hitting upwards. So now everybody has to watch to see if a portion of the paddle is above your wrist. And when you think about it, the narrower paddles are going to be more likely below your wrist. And if you happen to have an ergonomic paddle, like I showed earlier, this one, now the paddle's already going to be below your wrist, but you still have just as an aggressive serve. I know all these new service rules are made to stop the serve from being an overpowering weapon, but it's no ref can watch these things. Right now, since you do have to have an upward motion, if you're reffing a match and you ever see a ball with backspin on their serve, you can't impart, and the only way to impart backspin, which means you were coming down on it. Sure, after you make contact, your paddle might come up, but that's not what the rule states. So you have 3 things right now in the service rule that you're trying to watch that you can't see. And I've seen arguments over this quite a bit. The people who have the best serves in the world right now are the guys that go right next to that line and do they might be breaking all 3 of those, but the benefit usually goes to the server. And also right now, the advantage goes to the tall person. Their belly button can be 8 inches higher than that even than a short person. Where I have an idea that would solve all these things that I'd like to show today.
The stage is yours, Steve.
Okay, Randy, I think if you bring that camera over there.
Just pick it up on the tripod.
Yeah, we're just kind of maybe set it right there, pointing this way.
Have him talk to me. Talk to me.
Okay.
Steve.
Can you see me right here on the court yet?
Yes, but before you do that, can you talk about your court? I see you have gone with the U.S. Open colors. Do you like those colors?
I'll show you. I'll kind of pan. This is my entire backyard. This is the best thing you can ever do if you're a pickleball player and you have room, put a pickleball court in your yard. We have so many people come over here and play, teaching tennis players, teaching beginners. And advanced play. I'm fortunate enough to have, in Oregon here, we have so many top players. I've had some of the best players in the world back here, and in the summer it happens about once a week. So I also give lessons in my backyard here. This court's been featured on Pickleball magazine in some of my lessons, and also on the Pickleball channel. So, and I plexi-pave this myself too, by the way. It's not that hard.
How about your neighbors?
Well, I'm not super popular with one. I am in a neighborhood where we're packed in here. As far as the city goes, I'm legal. I just can't play past 10 o'clock. My old house, I had lights and we'd play till midnight. But I've taught some of my neighbors how to play, though. That helps. And I brew beer and I hand it over the fence and give it to them, so that helps too. So.
Okay. How do you like the colors?
My idea on the serve?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the colors of the court?
Something that a lot of pickleball players are going to only because they don't like. There won't be any logical reasons why this isn't allowed, what I'm going to show, but it clears up everything. This will make the job of reffing someone very simple if you're reffing a match and someone is getting close to serving above their waist or having an upward motion or have part of their paddle above their wrist. Like I said, you can't watch all three of those things. Even in slow motion, you'll have referees, if you watch it in slow motion, argue whether a serve is legal or not. And most good rules are all created because of things like this that make things complicated. So my idea is, let me explain it first before I go do it. My idea is, and by the way, they do this in racquetball, they do it in paddle tennis. Paddle ball, paddle tennis, and they do it in handball. Those are sports they serve underhand. But in all three of those sports, they let the ball bounce first. So what I'm proposing is the server holds their arm out parallel or lower to the ground. Their feet are behind the baseline. They can do whatever they want after that. So if it's a legal drop, it's legal. I'll show you. I'll do one. Can you see me, Jack?
Yes. Yes, I can see you.
So I'm holding my arm parallel or lower. Matt, you can see me?
Yes.
You can? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm holding my or lower. Doesn't matter. I drop the ball. I can hit it anywhere after the bounce. It's never, ever going to bounce higher than someone's waist. Never. In fact, this is an equalizer because if someone who is 6'6" drops it parallel, it'll only bounce about an inch higher, whereas their waist is 7 inches. If I want to serve backspin, I can still do lob serves. And it's much easier to learn if you've ever taught beginners how to hit a ground stroke or a serve. It's much easier for them to hit it off the bounce. If they do, a lot of times you'll have beginners, and I taught elementary PE for 30 years, and you try to teach them this, how to hit it out of the air. Volleyball's the same way when you try to serve a ball out of the air. This happens. Both arms move together and they can't make contact. Where if I drop a ball, now the only thing I can see people complaining about this is, well, it's different. I've been practicing my other serve for years. Well, it only would take someone a day to practice this. This would benefit players, I have to admit, that have good ground. But that doesn't matter if you're small or tall or quick or short. Where right now the serves, when some people's waists are up here, are benefiting tall people. So if anybody can think of reasons not to do this other than what I said, I'd be interested in that.
Well, those people can put their comments below this video, okay, and we will address them. You can address them.
Me for that, but it just makes sense.
So you've been involved with the USAPA for years. You go back 40 years with the USAPA?
Oh, no, we didn't. The USAPA was formed in about 85. So that would be 31 years.
31 years.
Our beginning tournaments were really, not sponsored by an organization. We'd have tournaments sponsored by Nally's Pickles, Seattle, Tacoma area, but we had no governing body of the sport until the 80s.
Where's Nally's Pickles now with sponsoring pickleball tournaments?
I haven't heard of them sponsoring any. Yeah. Now, yeah, there's lots. I mean, we have lots of good sponsors now, but it's not.
Right, not pickles.
Right.
Pickle companies.
Right. So Sid Williams was the founder of the USAPA, and he's a friend, and he lives in the.
Can you tell us a little bit about Sid? What's Sid's background?
He was a player, and saw this sport pickleball being played where he played racquetball, and started playing himself, and then started setting up tournaments. He probably had ran several racquetball tournaments, and knew how to run tournaments, and so he formed a governing body. And we had tournaments about once every 5 to 6 weeks in the Tacoma area back then. So that was all through the 80s.
And how did he get removed from the USAPA?
I don't know what happened in a lot of those years, because when I started teaching school, there were a few family and that kind of thing. So I don't know how it left his hands and went to someone else. He probably got bored with it, and then actually, pickleball really became something that was done more in Arizona than Washington as far as numbers of people. So it probably went to some people in Arizona. I know Mark Friedenberg was on that committee, and he was going back and forth from Seattle to Arizona. It's funny, but the Arizona crowd learned to play in Seattle and brought it to Arizona.
Oh, that's interesting, because now people in Arizona are bringing it back to Seattle and back to Port Townsend, where I live. We're getting a lot of these snowbirds coming in going, it's very popular in Arizona. We want to get something going here.
Right. That's funny, because that's gone full circle, because in the beginning, the snowbirds were going to Arizona and playing pickleball on the tennis courts in Arizona. Right.
Interesting. So you want to talk about ratings?
Oh, so I don't need to talk tons about this, but I can just inform people where it looks to be heading. So, ratings was just advanced, intermediate, or ABC. Then when we went to the 0 to 5, which copied tennis, that worked for a lot of years. But now we need more definition of what these skill levels are. Right now, if you go to a 5-0 tournament in one part of the country, you may see what is the same thing as 4-point in your area, or vice versa. So the new rating system uses what they use in table tennis, and there's another game called Go, and it's based on the people you've played, your quality of wins, and your I guess your also on your losses. And your rating, it's fluid. It continuously goes up and down after every match you played. Now it's new. The USAPA is heading this way. I was on the committee with Chris Thomas. Chris Thomas has been great about getting this rolling. It's been a lot of work. I put a video up last summer on YouTube, and so did Paul Ports. He's the professor that really came to me with this idea. He's a top senior pickleball player in this area. And for a while, I didn't really didn't understand it, and then more and more I understood it. I started playing table tennis tournaments where they use it, and I loved it. So I think that this will be the future. So no longer will you say I'm a 5-0, you'll say something like I'm a 2250. Be way more accurate. And then let's say that you go play a tournament and you enter men's doubles. You don't enter a division, you just enter the tournament. They will add your ratings up with your partner, and then so they can bracket the tournament. So they might put the top 8 teams in one bracket, the next 8 in the next, and so on. This would allow you to play with lower skilled people if you want to, because their lower level's going to be with yours. You might not play with the top players that you want to. If you want to play with the top players, then top players would choose other top players. But I know that this will allow husbands and wives to play tournaments together, friends who aren't the same level. This will be way more accurate. I'm a 5-0 senior. Well, in my area here, we have Enrique, we have Chris Miller, we have Rob Davidson, we have Wes Gabrielson, we have, I can go on and on, Curtis Campbell, and Patrick Williams. We have so many top young players here, but I'm a 5-0. I still have to play with those guys. And the other problem I'm seeing with the old rating system, you'll have a team win maybe for 2 years, they win all the 4-0s, or for instance, I see this more in 4-5s. They win, then they go, and then here in this area, then they may never win a match again. And this will solve that.
How many people are on the subcommittee?
There was about 8, I would say.
And did you meet on a face-to-face, or was it all done through conference calls or email groups?
Yeah, I live in the, we're mainly all these plus the nation. And they put Paul Porch and I on it because of the videos that we put out there on YouTube, because that's what stirred up made people more interested in this. So they put us on it because of that. And my meetings were all on the telephone. I mean, Skyping over the phone.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this new rating system will be implemented January 2017?
That's what I hope. That's kind of the goal. These things always tend to take longer than you hope, though. I do have a company, pickleballratings.com, who have rated most players who are active in tournaments, and they've went back 1 year using data from the last year. And so we have a good start. It's not perfect yet. Like they'll say, they're beta testing it. I think it's pretty accurate. I think it's a good place to start.
Well, after a few tournaments, it maybe have ranked too high initially, but after a few tournaments, it will level you out where you should be.
It won't be like 2 years of somebody they get moved up.
What does it take to get it from where it is today to actually become a rules in January 2017? Is there a vote, or does somebody just make a decision and flick a switch and say this is the way it's going to be?
Well, the committee's decided that this is going to be the future, and the goal is 2017.
So is that, can you take that to the bank? Is that like for sure?
Bank.
No, you can't take anything to the bank. No, this is pickleball.
Yeah, and you know, it's not that easy, because you have to choose which company is going to be the one that you choose. There's to do this, and so you know, there's a bidding process.
A bidding process. What are they bidding? What are they bidding on? Can't everybody just do the same thing?
No, I think some companies think that they have have an advantage over other companies. They'll tell you they can do this where no one else can. So there's different. Isn't it a reason in table tennis? They are very by the way, this system works perfect in singles. We're accurate right now on singles. The problem is doubles, because in pickleball, the nature of doubles, you isolate the weaker person, but sometimes you can have a dominant player just take over the court. So it's hard to fit in all those statistics, and so they have to come up with a algorithm that is going to make it accurate. So it's not simple, because in table tennis, they alternate shots. I hit a ball, my partner hits a ball. I hit a ball, my partner. So it's basically you're a singles player.
Right. Okay, Randy, is there anything you'd like to talk about? I know Steve has taken most of the time to talk.
I'm not a big talker. Well, off the court. On the court, that's a different story. But no, I was just happy to be here and chip in when I can.
Can you tell us a story about Steve before we sign off?
Well, it's funny, and if I share with us, watch Steve play, you'll look for it. If there is a pop-up and it's not necessarily a lob, but it's close into the kitchen, before Steve hits it, he pats the paddle on his thigh before he hits it. He does it subconsciously.
Yeah, I don't even know I'm
But
doing it.
I bring it up and we all just kind of have a good laugh, and that
Yeah.
we all get together. That's one of the impressions that I do of Steve is I lob, he'll slap the paddle against his thigh, and then
Comes from being a little kid playing baseball where you had the pop fly and you go with your mitt first. Well, I did the same thing with my paddle. That's the only thing I can configure.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, you guys, for spending an hour with me talking about pickleballs and ratings and showing us your backyard and giving us a sense of the serve, the serve of the future.
well, we hope.
Yeah, and you know what? It may, but that's my idea. I know it solves lots of things with reffing, and it's no advantage for any player. That maybe people have really good ground strokes, but that's not giving an advantage to a tall person.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.